Thousands of companies show up to sell their technology to the U.S. Department of Defense each year, but so few will transition from proof of concept to true production across the valley of death. The select few who do, their stories are rarely told. Until now, I'm Noah Scheinbaum, and this is Crossing the Valley.
What happens when a counterterrorism expert leads America's top defense tech firm? Check this video out.
Palantir Technologies is now the highest valued defense company in the world. Palantir's market cap recently surpassed that of Lockheed Martin. The company's at the forefront of the national security conversation, and they're unabashedly pro-America in their messaging. But still, little is known about how they actually operate. So at the Reagan National Defense Forum, I sat down with Palantir's Shannon Clark, head of defense growth, and who's been at Palantir for over a decade, to learn a little bit more. Shannon is the rare person who's had incredible success in both the public and private sectors. She began her career as a counterterrorism analyst, later serving as the special assistant to the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and then as director of counterterrorism policy on the White House National Security Council staff. Today, Shannon leads the company's work on Project Maven, and she spends most of her time focused on new innovation efforts, determining what products and technologies make it to market. I had an absolute blast talking to Shannon, and I hope you enjoy. All right, everyone. We're back here at the Reagan National Defense Forum, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Shannon Clark, the head of defense growth at Palantir Technologies, small little company you may have heard of, recently became the most valuable defense company in the world. That's kind of crazy to say. Yeah. You still, how does that feel?
Yeah, no, it feels good, especially to walk in here this weekend and saying that, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some memes around Carp's walking around here with like the Conqueror's belt right around it.
He's the man of the people still, though. I will tell you that.
This isn't just a headline. It's a turning point in defense history. Palantir didn't disrupt the defense sector. They outgrew it. This is what happens when data becomes more powerful than drones. They've proven that information dominance wins wars before weapons ever do.
It's fantastic. Shannon, you've had an unbelievable career. And really, I think both in government, what you've achieved, and now in the years, 12 years at Palantir?
Yeah, right? A little over 12, yeah.
That's incredible. I want to start with you, and we'll talk about some of the other interesting things and the interesting projects you've been a part of over the years. But starting in the government side, it is actually pretty rare to find somebody who comes up through the government kind of civil service and government service path and then goes on to find wild amounts of success in the private sector. Talk to us about your early days as an analyst and like, how did you expect to be in the private sector at this point?
Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me, and it's great to see you.
Sorry, there's 6 questions for you.
No, but I love it. You're like, it's like my children at home. Like right now, the stage they're at of just asking me a million things at once. So I'm totally
used
to it.
You can answer what you want.
Yeah. And then usually the answers I give them are very short. First of all, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to see you again. But I think the answer bluntly is no. Did I expect to be here? But I don't even know if I knew where I would be. I was really, really happy to be in DC for my undergraduate years. And I think the education that I had and the Jesuit education that I had at Georgetown and the roundedness there was really important. But the thing that was the most critical to where I am today was really what happened my junior year of Georgetown, which was I watched the Pentagon burning on 9/11 from my patio window and my patio in the back of my apartment at Georgetown. I think a lot of people have their 9/11 stories of where they were, and for me, it really shaped my desire to be part of the national security apparatus. And at the time, I didn't know if that meant I would be an analyst. I didn't know if that meant to be a foreign service officer. I definitely wasn't thinking in 2001 that would be, working in a technology company that was doing everything they could to defend, America and the West.
12 years at Palantir, years before that in counterterrorism and the White House. But it all started on a balcony, watching smoke rise from the Pentagon. That's not a tech founder story. That's a servant leader story. You can't teach this kind of drive. She didn't pivot into tech because it was trendy. She evolved into it because the mission demanded it. That's the difference between a product manager and a patriot.
But that was the most pivotal thing in my life that brought me to working in the government and working as an analyst. And then again, when I pivoted and decided to move into the private sector, like the underlying question I had was, what can I still do that will, help the United States? It will be part of national security, that I can wake up every day and know that I'm going to work making our country safer. So I think that while I didn't know what form that would be, that was always the general thesis. And to your point, as a civil servant, it's a little different, right? Like if you go to take an oath and you become part of the military, I think it's very clear that that's what you're taking on. But I don't think I knew. I didn't know that. I was like almost too young and naive to know that was, at least for the first part, what I was doing. But then I think is kind of the private sector has really allowed me to still be able to do that. It's one of the most gratifying things I could hope for in my life.
What makes Palantir different isn't just the tech, it's the people behind it. Shannon's journey from analyst to executive is proof. She didn't just pivot, she evolved, bringing the same intensity from the Situation Room to the software suite. This isn't career ambition, it's national commitment, expressed through data, defense, and relentless clarity of mission.
Yeah, I mean, programs called Crossing the Valley, we typically talk about the companies crossing the valley, but I think there's a human valley in this too, which is a lot of the work I do around defense tech jobs is talking to civil servants and military veterans who are thinking about what their second chapter and their third chapter look like. And so I'm curious what that process was for you to go from deep government expertise to, I'm going to go join this startup that's working in space.
Well, it was, I think the beauty of like what I feel so fortunate about where my career went, and like the kind of like, I always think of like Tarzan, of like you're jumping from one limb to another and like you're hoping that there's something there to grab onto. And I just feel like the beauty of what happened to me was after my time at the White House on the national security staff, I really decided to go back to grad school. And it was a little later for most people to go back to graduate school. In reality, I feel like I was still pretty young, but now looking back at the time, I remember I felt older.
Yep.
And taking that time away from DC to really think about what it was that I wanted to do. I mean, I remember like showing up those first few days at grad school and like afraid to talk to so many people because I still was like getting over just being out of an environment where I wasn't in a skiff anymore and I didn't have a security clearance for a second. And I was just like, what?
No, I will not tell you my favorite.
This is what real reinvention looks like. It's not just a resume change. It's a mission reboot. Shannon didn't just walk away from government work. She paused, recalibrated, and chose to lead from a new domain. Her decision to attend grad school wasn't about slowing down. It was about getting clearer on her direction. That's how leaders pivot, with intention, not retreat.
Yeah, no, I literally, there was like, there would be like my classmates, there would be foreigners, and I was like, am I going to have to write this, up and record this on my SF-86? I was so nervous. And I took that time away, which was the most valuable thing I could have done, because I think had I left the job that I was at the White House and I would have thought about going back directly into DOD, I wouldn't have really been as imaginative as I would about like what I could possibly do. And I remember there were some people that had left. And I was like, well, what are you doing in the private sector? And they're like, well, I'm going to go work for ExxonMobil. I'm going to be like a security analyst. And so they were almost taking literally what they were doing as an analyst, but just doing it in the private sector. And I thought, that's not really what I want to do. And it seemed so limiting, but I just had no idea what else was out there.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So being away and having that time to really like step back and say, okay, what else can we do? Was so helpful to me because it just showed me that the world was, the world was my oyster. And like my analytic mind didn't have to just be that I was some sort of intel or security analyst, but it could be used towards other things. And so, but I've also made this point before, and I think it's really, really important. In 2012, when I joined Palantir, there was not this giant ecosystem of defense startups, right? Like, it was like maybe I interviewed to potentially work at Google and their public sector. And I thought about working for some like other contractors, but there was no defense-based ecosystem. All of these people that I see here and like some of the amazing, I'm so proud of some of the amazing Palantirians that have since gone on and founded their own companies. Like it wasn't like I had my choice of where I wanted to go. And did I want to be involved in like an AI company, or did I want a hardware company, a software company? That just didn't happen. So, my journey to Palantir was when someone said to me, told me about what the mission was. And I thought, again, kind of to my earlier point, like I can wake up tomorrow and go work for this software company that's building technology that I would have used as an intelligence analyst to help, protect Americans, to help save our lives. And I thought there's nothing, okay, I'll go take a shot at it. But I often joke that you could Google Palantir and you could maybe find one article. I remember someone actually sent me a PDF that had like, I don't know if it was Newsweek. It was like something, an article. And they're like, here's like the only thing you can find on Palantir.
Most people leaving the intelligence community just port their skill set over. Same job, new badge, maybe more pay. But Shannon stepped back and asked, what else can I do with this brain? That's bold. And at the time, let's not forget, there wasn't a thriving defense tech scene, no AI boom, no startup ecosystem focused on national security. Palantir was basically invisible. So imagine how much conviction it took to say yes to something that couldn't even be Googled properly. That's not just career courage. That's mission first thinking.
It was the deliberatively secretive.
Yeah.
age.
And it was like our press strategy was no press.
Yeah.
And so I still to this day, people know who it is. And I think now just the success we've had in the last 2 years, people do. But it was so hard that it was like, I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate that I found it, but it was just, there was no one that even knew about it. Unless you were maybe on the Stanford campus, which, I think that's your alma mater, so maybe you heard about us. And you were walking around, University Avenue in downtown Palo Alto, and you probably saw, a young engineer wearing a Palantir t-shirt. You weren't going to see that in Washington, D.C.
One where Palantir chose to be deliberately secretive. Their press strategy was basically no press at all. In today's world, where companies often chase the spotlight, that kind of silence feels almost counterintuitive. But for Palantir, especially in the defense space, it was necessary. The company wasn't about flashy marketing. It was about building powerful technology quietly, behind the scenes. Shannon's point about only a small group, like Stanford students or people in Palo Alto, even knowing about Palantir, shows how underground this mission was. And it's striking that in Washington, D.C., the hub of national security, there was barely any visibility at all. That level of discretion tells you how serious they were about their work, prioritizing substance over hype. Even now, with recent growth and recognition, many people don't truly understand the scale and importance of Palantir's impact. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest game changers don't announce themselves loudly. They just get the job done.